Good day, fellow Chuds. And now we're going to be talking about Alanah Pearce and that strange new God of War title, La Fey. More than likely, all the anti-woke are bandwagoning that talking point right now. Now go ahead, look up her history, find out how she became a journalist. But if you want a brief rundown about the things that you should know, Alanah Pearce achieved a wide presence around 2015 when she secured a role at IGN as Choice and Culture Editor, and that was before she eventually rose to producer and host. Sometime later, in 2018, she moved to Rooster Teeth, co-hosting Inside Gaming and appearing in Funhouse videos, and building a visible personal brand across YouTube and streaming alike. And then, in November 2020, she joined Sony Santa Monica Studio as a junior video game writer, before eventually departing in late 2024 after contributing to some major projects. So what's the pipeline here? What achievement propelled this trajectory? What exactly did Alanah do to earn her entry into one of gaming's most hallowed studios, home to the God of War saga? Well, in this day and age, she owes all her success to the hybrid influencer creator profile that studios increasingly prize in an era of brand synergy and all this public-facing development. Even so, this whole leap from games journalism and entertainment hosting to narrative architect on a flagship franchise invites the imperative. Name the substance. By what vocation does one traverse so swiftly from reviewing video games to then making new video games for millions of people? We have what appears to be a revolving door between ostensible games journalism, whose calling does demand a measure of critical distance and objectivity, only to find out that this journalist has gone into the inner sanctum of game development itself. How does a figure who once reported on the industry, shaping public perception about its products, suddenly become the shaper of those very products?
Despite claiming that she has consulted on 3 games and written for 2 prior to this, I haven't been able to find any evidence of any previous writing credits, and these are the only ones publicly listed on IMDb after starting her work at Sony Santa Monica. Wikipedia links to this same article, so at the time of writing this, her claims to prior work is essentially hearsay. This is in addition to her voice acting credits in Gears of War 5, After Party, and Cyberpunk 2077 following her departure from IGN. There are no acting credits listed prior to this. Like her previous claims to consulting and/or writing for 5 games, which there is currently no evidence of, she also claimed to have worked as a writer during her 4 years at the studio.
Hi, I'm Alanah, and I'm a video game writer at Sony Santa Monica.
At the time of writing this video, Alanah Pearce does not have a single publicly available writing credit on any game to date. By now, the point should be clear. It is one thing for media personalities to move between outlets. This is not unheard of and, if anything, encouraged, given how tightly knit the media circuit is and moving in the same circles. It is another thing entirely to use your role as a games media personality or streamer or highbrow critic to strong-arm your way into the industry through connections, bias, and ultimately nepotism. Jonathan Dornbrush, Kevin Van Ord, and Alanah Pearce are only a few examples of the cronyism that exists within games media, where personalities are awarded with developer or studio roles, while actual developers with real, tangible experience are not.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's awful. Benefits everyone involved, right? Yeah? If the journo is going to potentially have a retirement path or an escape pod into the games industry itself, that's good for them, upward mobility. And then if the industry leaves that path open to them, they're going to get better coverage, right? They're going to have a lot of journalists biased simply by the potential to be sucked up into the industry itself instead of covering it. Makes all the sense in the world. Unfortunately.
But of course her transition begs the question, what networks of acquaintance, what ideological alignment, or institutional favor does the critic cross into the creator's chamber without the public scrutiny even once, demanding answers?
My first 2 voice acting roles were offered to me because I did podcasts at IGN that were like fairly beloved and a lot of people in the industry listened to them. and I would just like occasionally do a stupid voice on them. And so I just, we had game directors who were listening to those shows who just kind of ended up liking my content. And I was approached completely out of the blue by Rod Ferguson on Gears of War. And he just said, he pulled me aside at E3 and was like, hey, can we go get coffee? And I was like, okay. And I assumed he was going to, tell me about some game or something. I was still a journalist. And he was like, I want you to voice a character in Gears of War. And I was like, what? It wasn't even a thing that I had considered at that time. So that's how I got my first voice acting job. And I was not good. And Rod was like, she's not good. And it was tough to get through because I'd never done it before. I didn't have any experience. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that Cyberpunk happened the exact same way, where they were fans and they were like, we want you in our game. I guess you could do that if you started the games media route the exact same way that I did, but largely it's just straight nepotism. It was just straight up that people knew who I was and liked me and wanted to work with me. I was not good. I didn't deserve either of those jobs. It's just straight nepotism. It was just straight up that people knew who I was and liked me and wanted to work with me.
Not only has she written, she has also voiced characters in video games as well. In Dispatch, Pierce lends her talents to the character Malevola. In fact, so invested was she in this role that she imbued the character with her late stepfather's surname, transforming a throwaway line into a personal tribute.
My name's Victor, because I'm a fucking winner.
I'm Alice.
Bruno.
Malevola. My last name's Gibb.
That was my stepdad's last name. And they were like, do you want to give her a last name? Because the line was just written as Malevola. And I was like, if I were to do that, I would do it for my stepdad, and they kept it in. I know I recorded that, but I had no idea if they would keep it. So I think that was recorded just a little bit before he died. I guess I didn't know when I recorded it that he wouldn't still be here by the time the game came out, but... Oh, that's so sweet. But yeah, now that is... immortalized in a game that, that millions of people have played, and, it doesn't mean anything, obviously, but, I'm like, oh, well, now he's, related to this character I played, and that's just really sweet. Yeah. Oh, man.
And here the inner world of a lone writer visibly merges with the outer myth, the voice actor given the privilege to shape a character in her own image and memory. Why I mention this will become important later on. But before I get into talking about this LaFay game, I should also establish what Alana's philosophies are. There was a time she argued that having a child, specifically parenting a 2-year-old, constitutes a situational disability in the realm of gaming accessibility. She said this when discussing titles like Elden Ring, where she observed that the inability to pause the game amidst the demands of childcare somehow represents a hindrance akin to a disability, implying that this was something that video games must accommodate for.
It counts as a disability where a video game like Elden Ring is concerned if you have a kid. You have a 2-year-old, you're trying to play Elden Ring, you can't pause.
But what one should really find hilarious about this is the language employed. It reframes what is essentially a generational imperative to bear children as some form of impairment. Parenthood recast is a situational limitation to be engineered in the face of a digital interface made for one's personal entertainment. Also noteworthy is that at the 2024 Game Awards, Pierce claimed to have witnessed members of the Black Myth Wukong development team from Game Science crying in disappointment after their loss for Game of the Year. That anecdote circulated widely, painting the Chinese developers as sore losers, yet this account was firmly refuted by Charles Young, former editor-in-chief of IGN China, who had been with the team throughout the event. No one cried, and he had no idea why such a claim was made. More egregious, however, are all of Alana's references to working on God of War Ragnarok. She appeared in the credits, not as a narrative writer, but as an accessibility consultant. Actual credited writers such as Anthony Birch pushed back against any implied broader authorship, yet coverage on this, thanks to the YouTube channel Harmful Opinions, Alana's insistence to the contrary now appears to be dubious. And then, in 2026, came clarity. She had spent 4 years as a writer on the newly announced God of War La Fey, and she announced it with evident pride. And that all begs the question, why the earlier insistence on distancing herself from God of War Ragnarok, and why the subsequent revelation? But the main topic I want to address here is what makes Pierce so important to the industry. This isn't just a question of talent, as many have assumed, but the fact that either she or people around her knew exactly how to position her. Alanna Pierce hit a sweet spot by intersecting herself between old gatekeepers, journalists, and all these new platforms.
I knew this when I joined IGN, that games media wasn't going to last. I knew. When I got there and I watched the world around us be overtaken by YouTubers and Twitch streamers. And I remember having a discussion once where I basically was talking to some of our producers where I was like, it takes us too long to get a news video up because by the time we have it up, every other YouTuber has had it up 5 hours earlier. So there was already a problem where when you have too many people, it was like you had to submit a request to make a video and then you had to find whichever person to help you film it who was assigned to that and make sure they weren't doing something else, which they almost always were, of course. And then it gets added to a pipeline. It gets added to the end of the list of things that editors need to edit. And of course, everyone thinks the thing that they want edited is the most important thing. So you can't bump your way up that line in any direction. So it was just, there was no way for games media as a corporate structure to compete with YouTube and Twitch.
In fact, this is something that the YouTube channel Craftian hit on in his video, The Rod of Influencer Culture.
Random people on the internet have become just another part of the marketing cycle, especially when they know it'll come with millions of eyes on social media and through word of mouth to boot. Let's get some popular YouTubers to throw in the credits for good measure and reap the rewards because people have become so conditioned by their frankly pathetic parasocial attachment they have to these people. Whether Jack or Critical or whoever are genuinely great people is besides the point. They must on some level understand that they're being used for purely cynical purposes. If they want to be part of the game or had a great time or just want the paycheck is besides the point. It's what the actual fuck Ad Hoc and all these other developers are doing by treating people as products. For the same reason Alanna Pierce, Youngye, and all the other grifters allow themselves to be perceived as in turn. Good God, man, it feels like I'm going insane sometimes by how pervasive parasocial behavior has become and how many people are basing their entire existence around social media and regurgitating whatever the popular opinion is because they're incapable of thinking critically.
And so now, a popular series of video games about a man who wrestled with gods, fate, is shoved even further into the wood chipper of contemporary ideology. Alanna Pierce's visibility here raises the perennial question: who gets to rewrite an IP as popular as God of War? And why does so little mainstream games journalism interrogate all these networks of influence? Why is there nobody questioning the revolving door between journalist, consultant, writer, and voice talent? The games industry, which was once a realm of passionate outsiders crafting epics, now hosts professionalized classes where all speech is strategic. Everything is now a curated game of branding, alignment with corporate values, and audience capture. Pierce's trajectory from troll mailing activist writing to mothers of harassers, to accessibility advocate, to Santa Monica writer, to media personality, all exemplifies this. And all of her success should provoke a lot of questions, but it doesn't because there's no longer any value in honesty. And all this silence around Alanna Pierce is not an oversight. People are outright refusing to confront how power flows. It is hilarious that so many of these so-called fans of the God of War franchise in particular refuse to break the flow, like their hero Kratos most certainly would have. And if you really want to know what Alanna Pierce will do with this new God of War game, just consider the precedent of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac, where many critics widely observed elements of self-insertion by certain writers, particularly in the reimagining of Mary Jane Watson. Her character arc bent visibly toward this whole concept of lived experiences and writers' perspectives, rather than the mythic demands of the source material itself.
I can still fix this! I always do! We always do!
I always come second! I live in your shadow where my dreams turn to dust! That is the truth!
This is how women, or female-brained people in general, write stories now. All they end up doing is using popular IPs to air their personal grievances and domesticate any traditional male heroes. Any morals that these stories used to convey are now just a grounds for trauma therapy. They're all just repeated affirmations that you're not the problem. It's everyone else that's the problem. No, you're good and perfect just the way you are. In the case of God of War Lafay, the trajectory lies plainly before our eyes. This newly announced chapter shifts focus to Kratos' wife, whose presence was supposed to be just a memory and a mystery. And here you have Alanna Pierce, who was confirmed spending 4 years as a writer on this very project. And now remember that she got really invested with her role in Dispatch, that she even tailored the character she played on aspects of her own life. Well, that's essentially what's going to happen with Lafay. Alanna Pierce, contemporary writer, is going to write herself into the mythos. She's going to try to embody or elevate the role of Kratos' wife through a modern lens of female empowerment. And all we'll see is yet another female self-insertion within a much grander epic. One notes, too, the curious cross-pollination of influences. Dispatch's deep ties to the Critical Role Circle, Dungeons & Dragons enthusiasts par excellence, may help explain the otherwise jarring presence of a gelatinous cube companion in the game. This is a clear import from tabletop fantasy into what was ostensibly a Norse-rooted saga, Greek-rooted if you want to go farther back. But under Pierce's narrative hand, the mythic grammar now bends toward the personal networks and enthusiasms surrounding a completely separate franchise. And so what was once a realm of gods and giants now, for whatever reason, accommodates D&D monsters. But anyway, in the future, I think you'll see that most every major influencer capitulates to this game and its narrative. Otherwise, they would have to contend with the real-life story of a woman who once blurred lines around the end credits of AAA games, but now authors the chapter that places the in-game wife of the God of War at center stage. And when people do review the game, none of their takes will be about neutral craftsmanship or the effort to continue the story of Kratos. Instead, this will be about the personal vocation of a woman pressed upon public myth. The outer world of shared story will collapse into the inner world of the self. This is what has always happened when women lead these writing projects. The pattern manifests as self-insertion and reproportion to mirror the perfection of the writer's ideals, the Mary Sue. And this is why villains in these stories are so simplistic and non-threatening. Because these women have the audacity to believe that their ideals are just so airtight, so unassailable, that they cannot even conceive of any ideals that could actually compete with them.
The fuck was that? Lofty? What the fuck is Lofty? That looks like shit. I'm gonna be honest with you. Reminds me of that game Forspoken a little bit. I think that looks so uninspired and it looks so dull. And you guys have to remember that is the opening of the game, probably, because it says X for new game. It's possible there's a prelude, but that seems clearly towards the opening. It's dead. That game is not going to do well for what they expect it to do. Here's my point. If you got rid of God of War, like look at what the internet was asking for. A lot of people were saying, oh, well, maybe she gets to go into other pantheons. Okay, so do we get to see Chinese mythology, Egyptian, whatever, right? This just feels like Corey or somebody wanted to write a fantasy story. And I'm not saying, it's not going to be rooted and grounded in some actual mythology of something. Maybe it already is, and I'm just not aware of it. But you've lost the gore and the violence that made the first game. You've lost the character. You already lost him after 2018 because he changed so much he wasn't Kratos anymore. Now you've lost the identifiable mythology of it. And you've also lost you've lost me with the cube. It's in the little Disney character at the beginning. This seems like just a fantasy. Like if they would have taken God of War off the title and you didn't know the God of War story and there wasn't Kratos, it was just a story about this goddess who dies, you would not be talking about this game.